Hello, welcome to Laird Wellness Live. Scott Laird.
Jody Laird, good evening.
So we have had an interesting week. You've seen some of it happen as it happened on Facebook, but something you didn't see happen was we've been sort of, I don't know, what do you call it when, I guess, empty nesting?
Yes, that's
For
what
a
you
week.
call it.
Yeah, even though, so when you're at home, I guess you're batching it, right? Bachelor, guys are staying home alone, the wives are out doing something. But anyway, so our son has been at the beach with his friends. And, so our daughter's been, living away from us for several years, but he's still living with us. So it feels like really like an empty nest right now. And it's funny because we're saying, the house stays a lot cleaner when he's
Yes.
at the beach. The garbage isn't nearly getting piled up, and there's actually food in the fridge. Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah.
We couldn't put our finger on it. It's so funny. But anyway, that's because, yes, our son is at the beach. He's coming home. We do miss him. It's great to have him around. He's a wonderful go-getter. Yeah, I love when he plays the piano. Mm-hmm. It's like living in a cabaret. It's hilarious. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So anyway, we miss him, and we pray he's going to come home safely. So anyway, so that's happening this week. So last week, we had this thing about iron, if you didn't see it. I really encourage you to go watch last week's about iron and why you don't want either to have high or low iron. And on that, I think we told everyone that I was high in iron.
Right.
And that's kind of why we did that. And so where that came from is I did a blood test. And of course, tonight we're going to reveal all the results from that blood test. I think you'll find it pretty interesting. And take you through what we do when we do a blood test for somebody. I'm going to treat this just like I was going to do this with you. So we do a Zoom call, and
Right.
we'll get into that in a second. But anyway, this all came about because I wanted to get into a mountain biking hobby. We went recently to Arkansas. That's where our daughter lives. And mountain biking has exploded there. I mean,
Right.
there's even this little strip mall we went to where there are restaurants and bars and mountain bike shops and repair shops all together. And it's just sort of like this, it's like a community. There's even
Right.
there's even a mountain bike brewing company
Like, for
in
instance,
Bentonville, Arkansas.
in
Go figure.
the parking lot, every single vehicle that was there had a bike on the back of their vehicle.
Oh, at least one, and sometimes
Yeah.
the bikes were worth more than the vehicle.
Yeah.
I mean, these things are $2, $3, $4, $5, $6,000 bikes.
Yeah.
And so I hadn't been into mountain biking for a long time, so I started investigating this, getting excited about it, and of course aiming for the low end.
Yeah.
Bicycles.
Starter
Yeah,
bike.
starter bike. I mean, some of these things are just wow. These carbon frames and all this, like back when I was doing BMX back in the 80s, I mean, the only carbon frames you heard about were the ultra performance racing bikes and things like that. Now they're in not regular, but the high end mountain bikes.
Right.
So crazy stuff. But anyway, so that was our experience. So in the meantime, so we're looking at mountain bikes and all this, and I got my blood test because it was time to get my blood test. And you may have seen the synopsis of this when we shot a video earlier this week, and we put it up on Facebook, a little 1 minute type of commercial type of thing. And we told the story there where we got my blood test done, and it's just because it was the time to do it, and then realized I got my results back, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I have high iron. Well, something you didn't know is earlier that week, I had received a newsletter, which I always get, called the Blaylock Wellness Report. And in there, I hadn't even read it yet. I printed it off. I put it on the kitchen table. I was going to read it later. And I saw some of the headlines about colon cancer. And I was like, oh, this is a good one because both of my parents had colon cancer. Now, they both survived it, but, that puts me, in a very high risk category.
Right.
So I need to watch what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I'm always very interested in new research about colon cancer. So I started reading through this thing, and it was about how they considered red meat, a flaming... a smoking gun, a trigger, a smoking gun for cancer, but it was not for the reason they thought it was. Back in the day, we used to think it was protein, and that's why we got into veganism in the first place.
Exactly.
Because we were avoiding meat because of the protein. Well, guess what? It's not the protein; it's the iron. It's the iron that causes colon cancer, among many other things, including
Right.
heart disease risk and this and that. I was like, oh my gosh, it was a big, just a epiphany that I realized reading this. And even so far as, we're going to show you some of it tonight, that, we know that cancer feeds on sugar. Everybody knows that. When you get a PET scan, they give you the stuff to drink, and it has a dye in it. Well, the reason why it shows up on the PET scan is because the cancer attracts the sugar to itself, and then the PET scan picks that up and says, oh, there's the cancer.
Right.
So it should be pretty obvious. But other than that, even more than sugars, it is the iron.
Right.
Crazy. And then if you combine the iron with the sugar, whoa, now I'm going to show you something tonight about that. But anyway, so we're going to go through my blood test and tell you what I did good, what I did not so good. And I changed up a lot since that last blood test. The last blood test we did for me was December 2020. This was a long time ago. We were doing a weight loss program with a friend of ours just to, do his program and see how it worked and that kind of thing.
Right.
We were doing a lot of different things. And this is when I was still basically vegan. I was doing some tofu and things like this. But now after that blood test, I've done a lot of different things. We've pretty much gone keto. Now this is a very healthy keto.
Yeah.
Right. So we're doing good meats and this kind of thing.
Clean keto,
organic,
lots of veggies.
Lots of veggies, organic meats, not overloading on the meat, because if you do too much meat, you convert that to a bit of sugar. Interesting. I'll show you something on my result about that. But so it completely turned my my readings around from a vegan to someone doing keto. And it didn't make it necessarily worse, but it didn't make it better either. It was really interesting. So we're going to show you how that went. It was just a real eye-opener. So anyway, it was really interesting. So blood tests are kind of like a puzzle. Like when I do a blood test for somebody, when you do our blood test, we talk about every week pretty much. And the reason why we do it is because it's really valuable for folks. I mean, without testing, you just don't know. If you want to be doing something like I'm doing, like doing a new hobby, or you want to play with your grandkids or something like that, and you just don't know what you're...
Or you don't know what's going on with you, but you're just not right. You just know that there's something not quite right.
You don't have the energy you used to, or maybe you had COVID and it's like, man, and a lot of people say this, even I say this, I'm just not the same after COVID. Like there's something's weird. You can get this test done and we can help you pinpoint what it is. And in fact, regarding COVID, I'll show you how it affected me and made me go, that's what it is. And it was really simple. So what we're going to do tonight is going to go through that blood test, and I'm going to show you what I do for someone. I'm going to do my own test just as if I'm doing it for you, and show you exactly what we do during our 1-hour consult, because that also comes with this test, right? So I'm going to show you that here's what we go through, and I, before we do the consult, it's not just we pull out your papers and start going through it. I look through it beforehand, mark it all up, figure out what's going on, make some notes, and then our time together is for me to explain it to you and maybe just ask some questions that I couldn't quite figure out when I was trying to look at your stuff.
And also, you will be doing, as in if you buy the program, you'll be doing a 120 question questionnaire as well. So those 120 questions will also answer pieces of the puzzle for when you're doing the blood review.
Right. And it's very hard to do it without that. So if you do that blood test with us, just know that when you get an email from Jody saying, hey, here's a questionnaire, it's not just something you can go, yeah, I'm not going to do that. That is extremely important to try and figure out what's going on, because sometimes we see something in your blood and we go, what's causing this? What is with this one elevated marker and everything else is fine? We can't figure it out. Sometimes it's a question in the questionnaire or an answer in the questionnaire that lets us say, that's what it is. It really helps to pinpoint things that we can't see on a blood test.
Right.
And vice versa. Sometimes you answer questions and it looks like, well, everything's fine. You lived in a house that had mold and this and that, but okay, that should be fine. But then we look on the blood test and, well, this is elevated, that's elevated. That's because you lived in a house with mold in it. Or perhaps you lived in a really old house. And it's not all to do with the house you lived in, but you know what I'm saying. Where, back in the 40s, they painted the windowsills and things with lead paint. A lot of people have lead issues because of living in old houses and redoing them, or just living in an older house with that kind of paint when they were a kid. So lots of interesting things like that. So we're going to go through here and I'm going to show you just some of the results I had. So the first thing I want to show you is, this thing about iron. So let's do that first. Well, first I want to tell you what I'm doing about some of these things. So every time I see a marker and I figure, okay, well, you need to be doing something, it's based on, well, you know that old song where the elbow's connected to the arm bone bone's connected to the hand bone, something, whatever, it's something like that. But anyway,
something like
all of these things are connected. So all your blood markers are connected. It's not just because, you have elevated iron, you have this problem, this problem, this problem. Well, we're not going to be able to tell that. It's a combination. Because you have high iron and you have high glucose, now you have an elevated cancer risk. Okay, that makes sense. Or because you have this and this and this, that equals that. So you see where I'm going with this? It's a combination of things, and you're not going to be able to tell this by yourself, right? Because you're an expert in the things that you do. We're an expert at looking at these things, and all of a sudden the lights come on. That's what Yehovah has, granted us wisdom with. He has downloaded that to us, where we know how to see these things and make an educated recommendation. And sure enough, we just heard from somebody today, as a matter of fact, right before the show.
Yep.
They were, they didn't have any problems necessarily that would point out an infection of any kind. But I saw a couple of markers on this person's blood test, and I noticed on the questionnaire that they had a root canal. And I went, have you ever had your root canals checked out? And the person said no. And I said, maybe you want to do that. They just responded to us and said, oh my goodness, I just went to my biological dentist. Guess what? Both of my root canals are infected.
Yeah.
Ha! Now we know.
I would say that's going to be, wow, a lot more people than we think. That's going to be their issue.
And just getting off on a tangent a little bit, the reason why that happens is because when you do a root canal, I mean, it's what it sounds like. You're taking a really, really deep drill in an effort to save the tooth. And in the words of our friend Dr. Tom Lokensgaard, sometimes that tooth isn't worth saving. Pull it. Jody had to do that just recently, where there was 2 teeth not worth saving, and it was going to be more trouble than it was worth.
Right.
But anyway, so what regular dentists do is that...
Not to mention you don't save it because of the risk of what we're going to talk about right now.
Right,
Go
exactly.
ahead.
So root canal, real short, is a really deep drill, if you will. They're taking all the live stuff out and leaving basically a dead shell of a tooth. There's nothing living in there. And so they try and get all of the bacteria out. Well, you never get all the bacteria out because there's thousands of miles of tubules in each one of your teeth. You're never going to get all the bacteria out. So then they say, oh, we got it all. Now, if you go to a biologic dentist, number one, they probably won't do a root canal. But if they do, they're going to do something called ozone with it. And that probably gets rid of most of it. But anyway, what happens if you do it with a regular dentist is they pack it full of stuff. And what happens is now they've capped off the death. And that death is going to grow, that bacteria. And it's going to want to go somewhere. It's going to expand. It's going to get infected and want to go somewhere. So where does it go? Drips into your bloodstream. It's almost like having an IV bag full of toxins dripping into your bloodstream forever. And there's going to be all kinds of things you can't figure out what's going on with your health. And a lot of the time, we find it backs up to people who have had root canals.
And a lot of the time, most of the time, there's no pain.
That's the scary part.
There was no pain with my tooth. Now, I didn't have a root canal, but I have wisdom teeth that I've had all my life, and I'm 52. So I've had those wisdom teeth for 30 some years, and apparently wisdom teeth are like baby teeth and they keep moving. So whether you have a root canal or still wisdom teeth in your mouth, you got to kind of check to see what's going on, because my wisdom teeth were moving and moving up into my sinuses.
Yeah.
Which is a whole other story, which we may have a show on one night.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is there may be no pain.
Yeah. Probably is no pain. The person who we were talking about just a minute ago, that's why she didn't figure anything was wrong. She didn't have any pain. So, wow, go figure. Anyway, so let's get to this thing about this iron and sugar thing. So this is really interesting. Check this out. This is from that Blaylock Wellness Report I was telling you about. This is from the June edition. It just came out. And if you don't subscribe to it, I really highly recommend that you do. The Blaylock Wellness Report, you can just Google it online. You'll find it. Dr. Russell Blaylock is a neurosurgeon, a retired neurosurgeon, so he knows a lot of stuff. So let's read the blue. In the past, it was assumed that the low rate of colon cancer existed because native Africans, now they did a whole thing about Africans before this that you didn't read, but ate less animal fats and consumed higher concentrations of fiber. Okay, well, there's the whole vegan thing, right? But newer studies have demonstrated that the discrepancy has nothing to do with fiber or the fat in the meats. That was the other thing, that fatty meats caused cancer. Rather, it appears to be the high levels of heme iron in Americans' diet that seems to be causing, or that is causing the colon cancer. Americans also eat considerably more sugar than native Africans. Sugar combined with heme iron, which is in meat only, by the way. You can get iron in plants. That is non-heme iron. We'll get into that in a second. Dramatically increases the generation of destructive cancer-causing free radicals and lipid peroxidation products. So that is a very bad thing. So free radicals are basically unpaired electrons that go. What happens with an unpaired electron? So it's very reactive. It goes around like a pinball, and destroying all kinds of atoms around it in an effort to make itself stable. So what it's trying to do is go and rob an electron from another atom. And then, of course, what happens there? Well, that creates another unstable electron. And it just goes all around, just damage going all over the place. That's why now that's called oxidation. Or, free radicals create oxidative stress. This is why we have antioxidants in things like dark colored fruits and vegetables. Those antioxidants, when we eat those foods, actually have an extra electron that they donate to the free radical in order to stop the damage. That's why they're so valuable. That's why we need a high amount of fruits and vegetables in our diets.
Right.
So there you go. But anyway, so the heme iron, heme and non-heme. So heme iron, real short, just very quickly absorbed into your bloodstream. And that is the iron that comes from meat.
Right.
And that's what can build up and create high ferritin levels, high iron levels, like in me, for example. However, it's kind of interesting that I had high iron even before I ate meat. Interesting. So there's that. And then non-heme iron is the stuff that's in vegetables. Non-heme iron is also present in meat as well. Meat has both heme and non-heme. Vegetable only has non-heme. A good escape from all of that is eggs. Eggs have non-heme iron, and non-heme iron does not create those same problems because it is absorbed differently, more slowly, more with the ebb and flow of the body, and the body likes that better. That's why it's usually not a threat.
Okay.
So anyway, so that is non-heme iron and heme iron. So that is all about iron. Now, I also had an issue with H. pylori. What is H. pylori? H. pylori is a bacterium that acts like an antacid. We do not want an antacid in our stomach because our stomach creates acid to digest the food. If we have an antacid, that interferes with that. And you say, what about Tums? What about Rolaids and all these, what's that other one? The purple pill, all that kind of stuff. Nexium and
something
Pi,
like that.
there's another one. Anyway, I don't know the names because I don't take them. But anyway, bad news. You don't want to do that. The reason why you're having stomach problems is because you don't have enough acid. Talk to me about that sometime. Don't have enough acid or you don't have enough enzymes. Both of them are needed to digest the food. So I have H. pylori, which is causing a issue with not allowing my stomach to digest the food as efficiently. Now, usually that's going to reduce your nutrient absorption, but I don't have an issue with that. So mine was just slightly elevated, but I'm going to do something regarding that. We commonly recommend something for, it's basically a probiotic that gets rid of this bacterium in your gut. And so I'm taking that. So I basically, prescribe that for myself, so to speak. So I'm taking that. I'm also taking something called Lauricidin. Lauricidin is for my elevated neutrophils. Neutrophils are something that happens when you have a little bit of a bacterial infection in your body. I seem to have that consistently, and I'm trying to figure out why now. I have 2 tests, one from 2020 and one now, and the level of neutrophils is pretty much the same. I'll show you in a few minutes. That's a mystery to me. So now I have to dig deeper, and I don't really want to know, but I got to find out, figure out what it is. So in the meantime, I'm going to take something called Lauricidin, which is based on lauric acid, and it's basically a derivative of coconut oil.
Right.
And you just take this little scoop, and you just go through the little container of it and swallow the pellets, which are essentially, they're kind of like coconut oil, little coconut oil.
Is that
pellets.
what it tastes like?
I've never tasted it. It doesn't really taste like anything. It's sort of like little plastic pellets. It's weird. But anyway, you just swallow those, and apparently it gets rid of the neutrophils, or brings down the neutrophils. So I'm going to try it, see if it works. So those are my issues. In addition to, you've heard Jody talk about a thyroid issue that she has. And turns out that my thyroid is, although it looks normal on the reference interval for LabCorp, Dr. Lewis and folks in the know would say, well, it's not optimal. Even our friend Billy Weiss looked at it for me. We went to his house and said, I want another opinion on this. Tell me about it. He says, well, you're not in the red, but it's not normal. It's not optimal. You're not going to get the health you want like that. We have to do something about it. So that is just one marker called TSH. So I did a whole panel on TSH. So that's what we do. If we find one marker that is out, that has another test that can dive deeper and find out what it is, we're going to recommend that to you. So I did that for myself, and I'm going to show you the results of that too. So these are all the things that we looked at. So now my cholesterol went up. This was a good thing. This was a good thing because cholesterol is supposed to be higher. And let me show you what my results are. Here's the first little bit. So the cholesterol you see there in the red is total cholesterol of 228. Now, the top more rectangular box is from LabCorp. So they call that high because they want your total cholesterol to be 199 or below.
Right.
Well, now skip down. So you see the red box, right? It says 228 high. 161 on the right there. That's what I used to be. That was in 2020.
Sheesh.
That was too low.
That's very low.
That's too low.
Now that I see labs all the time.
Right. And now you skip down to the other red box down below. Now, these are the markers we use with Health Revival Partners and Dr. Lewis, and when we do a blood test for you. So look at the total cholesterol there. 228 puts me in the green. Green means I'm doing good. And you see on the right, there's our reference interval. We want you to be at least 200 to 260.
But
that's appropriate.
Right. But again, as soon as you get to that 200, they're going to flag you and want to give you a statin.
Right. And it doesn't look good on a life insurance application either, which thank goodness we still have about 10 years left on a life insurance. I don't have to do that. But anyway, so I was too low. See, at 161, I would have been way below. Now, why do you need cholesterol? It's to carry fat-soluble nutrients to your cells and back to your liver. LDL brings it to your cells. HDL takes it back out to your liver. So you need both. Now, look at the LDL there. Speaking of LDL, the blue box. So I'm at 143. Oh boy, well, modern medicine is freaking out. They want that to be below 100. So me being at 81 there on the right before, they were happy with that. But now skip down to our reference interval with Dr. Lewis, and LDL, we want it to be at least 100 to 160. So at 143, I'm in the green. You should have seen my cholesterol numbers before. They were red and yellow and all this kind of stuff. Now I'm in the green with higher cholesterol. Go figure.
Go you.
Go you. Yeah, well, okay. So it's not perfect. See,
and so that was the difference of you kind of being almost completely vegan.
Yeah.
I mean, you would eat meat once in a while, maybe once every 2-3 weeks, you might have a chicken wing.
Yeah, like
a friend's house.
Like if a friend made one of our friends, like when he has a bunch of people over, he likes to make a big filet mignon type of thing. And so, okay, I'd have a little bit of a piece of that because he's so proud of it, and just out of respect, I have a piece of it. But I really thought meat was bad for me because of the whole protein causes cancer thing. Now, red meat, in that same Blaylock Wellness Report, it does say that red meat still is a red flag for colon cancer. So, still something to keep in mind. It's not like, woo, I can do steak every day. No, it's too much iron, number one. Number two, there are some other cancer-causing agents in there as well. Glutamine. Not glutamine, glutamate, pardon me. Glutamate. We're going to show you that as well. That is very high in meats. And it's also high in cheese and in mushrooms. If you eat a lot of mushrooms.
Interesting.
So yeah, just a couple things to keep an eye on. That's why it's always important to stay up with research, because there's always new stuff being discovered, and you can't really rely on the old stuff. But then again, some of the old research is some of the best too. So you just have to kind of know what you're talking about. So anyway, that was the cholesterol. Now here's why you never want to take a statin. By the way, we had someone we worked with. She took a statin on the advice of her doctor, and her creatine kinase level, which is supposed to be around 100, 200 around there, not very high. It was when she was doing the statin drug, they took her off of it because it raised her creatine kinase level, which is a heart and muscle issue. So, your heart is a muscle. Yeah, muscle wasting, to 10,000. That's scary. That's very scary. Now, when she came to see us, she was down to 5,000. We had trouble getting it down with her. We tried everything we could. And now just recently, it almost seems like maybe that was a bit of a healing crisis, because now she's down to 3,000 and she's getting better. So we've actually paired her up with Dr. Carter to see what he can do for her. And that's the handy thing too, where if you come to us and we have an issue, we work on it, and we can't get to the bottom of it, we have some folks that can take you to the next step. It's not just about us. We can hand you off to all these other folks who believe the same thing we do about medical freedom, about medical privacy, all this stuff. Hospitals don't have to know. Your doctor doesn't have to know. If you just want to deal with this yourself, we respect that. We'll just deal with you. And it's self-directed healthcare, which is great.
Right.
So anyway, these are what statins can do to your body besides raising your creatine kinase level. It can create diabetes. It can raise your risk of musculoskeletal disorders, cataracts. And cataracts are the canary in the coal mine for Alzheimer's. That is the beginning stages of Alzheimer's. That's a warning. If you have cataracts, you need to look at the plaques being built up in your arteries and in the arteries in your brain.
Right.
Okay, now liver damage. That can also be a cause of that. Dementia. Oh, there you go. I didn't even see that. Dementia, neurodegenerative diseases, and psychiatric problems. Depression, anxiety, aggression. Where is that all located? In the brain.
Because what does statins do? It takes down, I mean, this is really a layman's way of explaining it, but it
brings down cholesterol.
It brings down your cholesterol. It basically, I had a conversation with my mom last night about this very thing because my grandma has sort of a dementia. Mm-hmm. And, she grew up in the era of low-fat diets, low-fat everything. She has diabetes. Mm-hmm. She liked sweets.
And so she liked her aspartame, too, which is a huge risk factor for
She liked her aspartame, her Diet
Alzheimer's.
Coke for many years, and she has dementia. So I'm like, Mom, you need to eat your fats. You need to get those fats in, right. Your MCT, your avocado oil, your nuts, your coconut oil, your grass-fed butter. You need to get all those in to feed your brain, because otherwise, statins for one, but without those fats, you're basically, I want to say, dehydrating your brain.
Well, yeah, because what's your brain made out of?
Fat. 65%.
Right, exactly. 65% fat. And so, and also, we need to get nutrients to the brain, right? Your brain is the most, it's the bigger, it's the biggest, it has the biggest demand on nutrients in your entire body. And so if we're transporting those fat-soluble nutrients with cholesterol, you need to get them to your brain. When you lower the cholesterol, it's like taking those fat-soluble nutrients, putting them in a taxi, and slashing the tires on the taxi. They're not going to get anywhere. So, and the way Dr. Lewis explains it is brilliant, because he looked at, I think we shared this with you guys, a couple of weeks ago, about how cholesterol is like fat, or it's like soap. It's like soap, because fat-soluble nutrients, we're trying to get fat-soluble nutrients through the blood system. Well, the blood system is not based on oil, it's based on water, and oil and water don't mix. So if you're trying to get fat, i.e. oil, soluble nutrients, through a water-based blood system, how are you going to do that?
Right.
You got to do that with a carrier, and the carrier is cholesterol. All right, so let's take another look here. So other things it can cause: osteoporosis, heart disease. Again, all because we're not getting the nutrients to these parts of the body. It should be really elementary. Health can be really complicated, or it can be really simple. If you just take a 30,000-foot view and look and go, oh, this is pretty obvious. All of these things are different parts of the body that nutrients aren't getting to because we don't have enough cholesterol. Duh, it's really that simple. We can get into the nuances and get into the weeds and figure it out and get down to the very molecule, but sometimes we don't need to. We just take a look back. I mean, how do you think, the father of modern medicine, Hippocrates, figured it out? He was from 2,000 years ago. He didn't have any of this stuff, but he just sat back, observed what happened to people when he did this or did that or didn't do one of those things, and said, this is what happens to the body. And 9 times out of 10, Hippocrates' conclusions are still correct.
Right.
So, I mean, that's 2,000 years ago without any research, without any double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. And that was another interesting thing that that Dr. Blaylock Wellness Report said. Mm-hmm. It's something I've said for a long time, and I felt kind of validated for reading it. I always say anecdotal evidence is still evidence. I don't care if it's in a study. If I see that eating strawberries helped 100 people get well off of a flu, I'm going to say strawberries helped the flu. But that's not true. But anyway, something like that. But he said that there's way too much emphasis put on these official studies, and they're peer reviewed and this kind of thing, because what if every one of those people is mistaken?
Well, and what if they're being paid by somebody that shouldn't be paying for them? And that is definitely an issue nowadays, these peer-reviewed studies. Yes, a lot of them are very, validated, but
Sure. Well, yeah,
a
they're all
lot of them
valuable.
today are being skewed, like you always say too with the numbers. You can skew those numbers however you
Right.
want them to look.
Yeah, look up. So, just when you have a minute, I'm not going to explain it tonight, but go on Google or Brave or DuckDuckGo or some other place you want to go, or some other better browser. Anyway, look up relative numbers versus absolute numbers when you're talking about studies, medical studies, and you'll see something very interesting. The numbers, they can be the same numbers, but they can be interpreted two different ways.
Right.
And to the uneducated public who reads these things, it's going to seem like maybe a drug that went through a study is far more effective than it really is. We'll just leave it at that. We'll
Right.
explain it some other time. But anyway, so very interesting stuff about cholesterol.
Right.
So that was regarding cholesterol. Now, the next thing we wanted to show you was, now here's the big one. Now we're going to show you before and after. I'm going to show you a bunch of colors. You're going to see them on the screen, but don't worry, we'll walk you through it. This is my report that you get when you do a blood test with us. This is actually the resulting report that you get that Dr. Lewis created. This is a patent pending algorithm that he puts together.
Yep.
And it shows you basically of the 55 biomarkers that we do when we do a blood test for the thing that we do, he picks the 5 most important markers for the development of diabetes or heart disease, stroke, cancer, kidney issues, brain issues, pain issues, respiratory issues, fat issues. I'm reading off the side here, and a couple other things, blood issues and liver issues. So each one of those has, all of the markers tie into each one of those, but there's 5 that really make the difference.
Right.
That he's researched, and he sort of put different weights to each one of these to figure out what are the most important.
And let me add that it's not only just this page. This is one page out of the 7 pages for this particular report. And the rest of the pages have to do with an explanation with each and every one of those biomarkers.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
For example, the first one you're going to see is glucose up there. Most people know what glucose is, but he gives a paragraph on glucose, what it is, what it means if you're high, what it means if you're low.
Yep.
And where you are. So it kind of gives your temperature on exactly where you personally are.
And real information.
Yeah.
Real, solid, layman terms information, and not scare tactics, not stuff you're going to see on WebMD or searchmysymptoms.com or something,
Or anything with a particular slant.
Right. This is just, here is what glucose is. Here's what it does in the body. And you know how, when I talk, I always use, metaphors and things like this and comparisons, like the whole taxi thing, right? With cholesterol. Dr. Lewis and I talk the same way about that. And so he explains it the way I would. And maybe that's why I appreciate it so much, because he explains it in a way that I can understand.
Yeah, layman's terms.
Layman's terms, exactly. I like to go through the complicated stuff, figure it out in my brain, figure out how I would explain it to a 5-year-old, and then that's how I tell everybody. And then everybody gets it. And then now it's not so complicated, right? It can be complicated, or it can be really simple. Right. So speaking of complicated, get ready. Here it comes. Okay, so here's the before and after. The one on the left is my blood test from 2020. The one on the right is the one I just did in May. On the right-hand side, now this is exactly, I've done just this for me. When you do a blood test with me and you've done 2 of them and we're going to compare them, I will do this for you. Something very, very similar to this. So I look at what you've done well and what has gone wrong in the last few months, and we can talk and figure out what happened. So of course, all the green check marks are things that got better. All the red X's are things that did not do so well. So I improved, let's go down to the first check mark. I improved my cancer risk from 1 out of 10 to 0.5 out of 10. What caused that? Okay, well, a couple of the markers did not get better, but 2 of them did. And Dr. Lewis puts more weight on the 2 that I improved regarding cancer risk. And they are NLR, I'll explain that in a second, and vitamin D. So I increased my vitamin D from, you see on the left there, 57, and I increased it to 74. And with the NLR is the neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio. Neutrophils and lymphocytes are 2 of the 5 types of white blood cells that we have. And the ratio between those needs to be as small as possible. If they're really wide, that means we have an issue, because if you have lymphocytes that are low and neutrophils that are high, well, that's going to create a big divide, right? And that is a warning flag for cancer. Now, that's because neutrophils, when they're low, means that you have a viral infection, and neutrophils high means you have a bacterial infection. I have a little bit high bacterial infection. That's why mine are slightly elevated. But if they were both like that, okay, now we have a real big issue. So we want that divide to be as small as possible. And as you can see, go ahead, Jody.
Well, regarding vitamin D, I'm going to try and be like the audience and ask you questions regarding your report as to what I think they're going to want to hear. So what did you change with your vitamin D to go from 57 to, what was it, 74? What were you taking, and then what are you taking now?
I was doing about, 2,000 to 5,000 a day, kind of like, I'm just being lackadaisical about it. And everybody's going to need a little bit different, but I decided to, mine was okay at 57, but when COVID came along, now that's another thing that happened in between these two things. That's an interesting monkey wrench in all of this, because I was doing everything right, but then I got COVID and it screwed up a bunch of stuff, which I'll show you. Because even if you don't take the vaccine, and I did not take the vaccine, I got COVID just itself, and some numbers got messed up, because this is not a natural virus. This was man-made, and something man-made is not going to jive with the human body, and it's going to cause problems, whether you get the vaccine or the virus. So just be prepared for that. If it comes your way, you got to nail it as soon as you can, and that's what we were doing. We were nailing it all the time before. We were doing it prophylactically with vitamin C. We were doing vitamin D. We were doing the zinc. We were doing the quercetin. We were also doing some prophylactic ivermectin before that. And even with all of that, we still got it. So not nearly as severely as maybe we could have, but we still got it. And in doing so, I really, really ramped up my vitamin D.
Yeah.
So now I do 10,000 a day. Now, I will get some sun. I got some sun today out at the community pool over here, but I'm still going to do 5,000 a day through the summer.
Yeah.
Because it's really protective against, well, for one, cancer, right? And you'll see vitamin D if you do a test like this. I mean, let's take a look at this again. If you take a quick scan through here and do kind of like a Where's Waldo type of thing, you'll see vitamin D in several places. You'll see it down in the pain area, about, 2 down from the cancer, or 3 down from the cancer row. Vitamin D is implicated in your pain risk. And down below that, in your respiratory risk, there's vitamin D again. And it's all over this thing. So there are a few markers like that are really important for all kinds of risks. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you can see there's certain things that I did well and certain things I didn't. And at the very bottom, you will see the liver. And my iron was actually good. It went from 171 to 171 to 169. Now, it's still out of range. The standard medical range is about 160. So according to them, I'm not doing that great. But those reference intervals that you get on a standard blood test are based on the average of every other American. Well, what's the average American's health like? Not that great. If you want to be in that camp, then you'll be just fine with their reference intervals. We are far more fussy with our reference intervals. Ours is all about wellness. They say you're okay if you have iron up to 160. Dr. Lewis says, nah, if you're above 120, we ain't doing so good. So mine's at 169. Mine's too much. So what am I going to do about that? I mentioned these other things, these other supplements I'm taking. Is there a supplement you can take for iron? No. What I can do is change how I'm doing things. So I was doing a lot of red meat before, surprisingly, doing this whole keto thing after being a vegan for so many years. I thought I'd switch it up and see what happens. So apparently I still can't do a lot of red meat. That's okay. I can do fish. I can do chicken. And even those I'm kind of on. But eggs. I'm okay with eggs. Eggs are non-heme iron. That'll help bring me down. It's not going to bring me down enough, though, because apparently I was still high when I was a vegan, right? I was at 170. I actually brought it down to 169, so doing meat, which was weird. So obviously my body likes to hang on to iron. And another parameter or another biomarker I had in my test was iron saturation was also too high. So that means my body is absorbing it and hanging on to it. So I need to get rid of some of that. You know how you do that? Old-fashioned bloodletting. In other words, go give blood. So I have an appointment at the end of this month to go to the Red Cross and give some blood. And that's how you can literally just, you're giving some blood, it brings your iron level down, Simple as that.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, helping out other people. They're going to get some non-vaccinated blood out there in the systems.
We should definitely
So why not?
we should definitely get your iron tested like a week after.
Well, a
you
week
give.
after, yeah.
Just to see.
Because iron takes 6 months. It will take you. I just read something online the other day where when you give blood, it would take about 6 months to get back up to the level that you were. Now, some people are very high in iron, so I plan on giving iron. Mine's not that high, so I'll give probably like twice a year, because I don't want to get it too low and then get into an anemia situation, and too low of ferritin, which is the body's storage of iron inside your cells. Free iron is what you see on the test where it's labeled iron, but iron that's inside the cells is ferritin, and that's what your body hangs on to. If you have that too high as well, that's dangerous, or too low, it's dangerous. So I want to keep it just right. So I'm going to do about twice a year. I figure that's about good enough for me. But some people, I've seen tests where 400, 600 of ferritin, when really we want that 150 or below for optimal health. So we've recommended to those folks that they give blood every 8 weeks for a good 6 months, and then test again and see where we're at.
Right.
And that will help bring them down. Okay. So there's a few of the things that we had on my blood test. Now let's just go through here. Okay, so there's one parameter I want you to look at. 4 up from the bottom, the lipid panel. And you'll see 2 from the right. There's a little orange block. And it's TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, at 4.03 or something. I just had it tested the other day because I saw that number. And I had a full thyroid panel, and I was at 3.9 or something. So it hovers around 3.9 and 4 for me all the time, because as you can see on the before block, if you switch your eyes left there and take a look at my number there, it was still 3. Was it 3.92? It's really small on our screen here, but anyway, 3.9 something. So apparently I have a thyroid issue, and you can't just base that on TSH alone, because Jody has had a thyroid of 4 in the past for a long time, same level as I have, but without going deeper to figure out, okay, it's saying TSH is saying that's a great car because it's red. Well, you can, it might be a great car, but you don't know unless you look under the hood. You start it up, you do the kind of thing. You gotta know. See, I am with the metaphors and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you're fast with that.
It's because I'm dumb, and I just want to make sure it makes simple for myself. No, anyway, so. You have to dive deeper and figure out what's really going on, because TSH is sort of just I mentioned it before, the canary in the coal mine. Doesn't tell you what the problem is, just tell you there's a problem, and you got to find out what's going on. So there's all kinds of other.
For some people, it could be simple as absorption and digestion. So sometimes it's just about changing things up in your diet and taking certain supplements, and that could resolve it. However, it didn't do that for you. It didn't do that for me.
Well, that's interesting. That's interesting you say that. So let's keep that in mind. So let's go to you for a second. So Jody had a TSH of 4, same as me. But then we dove deeper and realized that she had what's called TPO antibodies, which are basically proof that the thyroid is attacking itself. It's an autoimmune condition. So the TSH of 4,
which I've had for how many years now?
Probably close to 20.
It is what, along with your 2 parents having colon cancer and me having that thyroid storm, all happened with what? Within 1 year of each other, when I was about 36 years old.
Yep.
So that started us on our health journey. Those 3 incidents right there.
Yeah, now when you said thyroid storm, like Jody's, she looks like she had all kinds of Botox in her lips and her tongue swelled up. It was crazy. It was scary.
I couldn't talk. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't eat. My lips engulfed and my tongue engulfed every day. I looked like a big duck. Every morning when I woke up, my lips were ginormous, like an allergic reaction.
Yep.
And apparently it's a very, very rare symptom of Hashimoto's.
Right, and Hashimoto's is basically the medical term, clinical term for low thyroid to the point where you now have an autoimmune condition. Yeah. All right, so that was a low functioning thyroid. So basically, the higher the TSH number, the more likelihood you have a low functioning thyroid. Which means you're going to be sluggish, you're going to be tired, you're going to have all kinds of depression, anxiety, all kinds of stuff.
Not being able to go to the bathroom.
Right. So now all that with a TSH of 4, but we had to dive deep to find out that it was actually an autoimmune condition. We dove deep with mine, and guess what? I'm going to show you what mine said. Take a look. Here is my report. My TSH, there you have it. I mentioned it was 3.95 when I went to do the second blood test to get the thyroid checked out. And this happened very quickly, by the way. You can get results for thyroid in just a few days. I still have one marker that's not there, but the rest are what really tells the story. So 3.9, that's within their reference interval. We like to see that below 1.5. That's why I had it checked out. That we don't like 4. As you can see, they did not flag anything on my LabCorp report because they consider my numbers normal. But I consider this a red flag for me because Dr. Lewis says, no, anything more than 1.5, we want to figure it out. My friend Dr. Aaron Ernst says his reference interval is 2. He likes to see anything below or above 2. He wants to check it out. So my T4 was at 4.6. Well, the reference interval is 4.5. So I'm just barely making enough T4. T3, 71 to 180, I'm making 80. So as you could see, and then T3 is 2.3. That's really barely enough. So basically, my thyroid's okay, but it's not functioning optimally. And the reason we figured all this out is because we went to see my friend, Dr. Or Billy Weiss, the pharmacist. I call him a doctor because he knows as much as a doctor. Anyway, and he looked at this and went, yeah, he says, you're all right, but it's not optimal and you should fix it.
Right.
And he basically said, you don't need a med, but you may want to take a desiccated thyroid supplement, which is basically thyroid from a cow. And so that's what I'm doing.
Well, I mean, when you take an actual supplement, Armor Thyroid or whatever it's called, that is from pig, porcine.
Yeah, and then we want to avoid that. So that's kind of problematic because a lot of these thyroid supplements are from pigs. And of course, we're biblically kosher and we don't want to do that. So that kind of limits what we can do, but that's okay. Yehovah will figure out a way for us to get through that. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is how we piece things together. So, Jody, you had mentioned that the thyroid can be affected by what you eat, right?
Yeah.
I read something the other day. So when I see my own results like this, I start poking around and, I don't get freaked out because I know what I'm looking for. A lot of people do that and they start Googling their symptoms and, oh, I'm dying. But, no, I know what I'm looking for. So I knew what I was looking for and I looked up, I just thought about it logically. And you could do this too. So if you were like me and you had an iron level that was the same from 2 years ago, you had a thyroid level that was the same from 2 years ago, could those two be related?
Maybe.
So I looked up the iron's effect on thyroid. Sure enough. Yep. If your if your iron is either too high or too low, that can cause your thyroid to be out of whack. So how many thyroid issues do we have in this country? In a country that thrives on meat eating, which is very high in heme iron and could cause all kinds of problems like heart disease, cancer. Gee, do we have these in this country? Thyroid issues? Very interesting.
Not only that, but the number one selling drug in America is Synthroid.
Yeah.
So
More than statins. Crazy. So there you go. So what I need...
Yeah, my question, which you won't be able to answer, but my question as somebody who's watching, if I were watching, this is what I would want to know. Well, what is the right balance between meat and not meat meals do we eat? We don't know that answer.
I don't know the answer. All you can do is change what you know to change and test again. So that's what I'm going to do. So here's what I'm doing. I'm doing that Lauracidin stuff to bring down my neutrophils, right? I'm doing the desiccated thyroid to bring up my thyroid function. I'm going to eat less meat, more eggs, more veggies, that kind of thing. Kind of go back to my veganism a little bit.
Which is funny, though, because I was vegan for 12 years and still had the thyroid issue.
And everybody's different.
And about 10 years into being vegan, my hair started falling out.
Right.
So I started getting a bit more of a storm happening. And
Right.
then I went keto and things mellowed out again.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, and this is what makes it so difficult. There are some common denominators between each. We're all human at some point. We all have blood. We all have skin. Doesn't matter what color it is. We're all the same to some degree, right? But then there's all these nuances, even between just men and women, because mine is an iron issue. Why? Because men tend to have higher iron. Why? What did I mention was the way to get rid of it? Bloodletting. What happens to women in childbearing years every month?
And
A little
actually,
bit of bloodletting.
come to think of it, a lot of women have lower iron.
And those are the ones that have heavy periods.
But however, I'm also
Interesting.
reading that low iron has to do with thyroid issues as well.
Yeah, it is. That exactly.
High or low.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I think I just mentioned that a little
You
while
did,
ago. Yeah.
you
So
did,
the
but-
high or low iron. So you got to be real careful. This is a real epiphany here that we're having, that iron seems to be related to the thyroid, especially for men and women, and for a whole bunch of other things, for cancer, for heart disease, for
Yeah.
anemia, for having a low iron. Right. So wow, this eating meat thing. We might really have to take a look at this. Not to the degree that Bill Gates is saying that we need to eat fake meat and not
bugs.
eat animals ever again. No, we need to look at the biblical model. What did they do in biblical times? They did not eat meat every day. Now, interesting, hang on to that thought. So they had it for festivals a lot, right? It was an agricultural, bread is mentioned a lot more in the Bible than meat. Now, we'll talk about bread some other time. It's not the same as it was in biblical times.
We've already talked about bread.
We'll talk more about it. But anyway, we won't do that today. But anyway, so, it was because it was expensive. It's still expensive today, right? Meat is expensive because you have to raise an animal, get it to that point, spend all that money, and the farmer's going to want his money, hit the rancher, for raising that animal because he's got to recoup his expenses, right? So it's very expensive to raise an animal. So that's why meat has always been expensive. Now, who ate a lot of meat in the Bible?
The kings.
The kings, well, but then the kings got ill, like King Asa, who had an
Yes.
issue with his foot, as you can read in the Bible, in Chronicles, I believe it is. And today we look at that and go, that was diabetes.
Or goat.
Or gout from diabetes. And you get diabetes from too high sugar. Well, that's not meat. Yeah, it is. You eat too much protein in a sitting,
Uric
it converts
acid.
to sugar. And if you did that over and over and over and over again, being the king with unlimited resources, makes sense. Now, who else ate a lot of meat and got away with it? The priests. Because they were allotted a portion of all of the sacrifices that the Israelites brought, right? So how do we make sense of this?
I wonder if
How
they were keto.
they probably were. So they got meat coming out of their ears from all these people bringing meat all the time. But they were the ones responsible for slaughtering the animals, breaking them apart, lifting them up, putting them on the altar. All of this very heavy physical labor. The
Yeah.
Levites were responsible. The Levites were built dudes.
I wonder if they were buff.
Oh, they probably were, and because they were doing a lot of this heavy
CrossFit.
labor, and CrossFit, keto in the Bible. Stop it. So anyway, so they did a lot of physical labor, and guess what? When we do a lot of physical labor, that's another thing that can help keep iron down. I mean, I try and go to the gym most mornings of the week. If Jody kicks my lazy butt out of bed and I'll go to the gym in the morning, yes, I'll do it. And the more we do that, the more what do we call it when someone gets really strong? We say they're ripped. Where do we get that term? We're ripping the muscles when we lift weights and this kind of thing. So when we rip the muscles, guess what happens? We destroy blood cells. When we destroy blood cells, we reduce the iron.
That just makes way too much sense.
Doesn't it though?
Yeah.
And then also when you do that, there's more dead blood cells found in the feces, in the urine, all these and in the urine you wouldn't be able to maybe tell, or even in the feces because it's regular colored or whatever, but there's just microscopic pieces of iron there, dead iron
That's what makes it brown.
and sweating. Yeah, actually, that's true. So when the body gets rid of iron in the body, or red blood cells, that is, it keeps the iron. Actually, it keeps the iron, but gets rid of the rest of the blood cell. The red blood cell will lose its redness and kind of like die off and kind of get kind of a brownish color, and that is literally where the brown color feces comes from.
Yeah, so if your poop is white, that's not good.
That's not good. No.
Not good.
That's right. So anyway, that's another way to get rid of some iron is to work out really hard. Now, of course, working out really hard, it's all going to
Yeah.
depend on who you are. You got to be careful and all this kind of stuff. So get your iron checked, and we'll go from there. Okay. So
Yeah, nowadays they even say that people are, sometimes working out too hard, and that's an
Yep.
issue. I was working with somebody recently for my thyroid, and they actually asked me how many times a week do I work out, and what do I do, and how many hours, because, and then I told them it was, an hour to an hour, 15 minutes, 4 or 5 times a week, and they're like, okay, that's not too bad, because, if you're working out too much, that could be detrimental to your health too, and I'm like,
Yep.
And then I'm like, well, thank goodness, because I don't like working out that hard.
You know, that's funny you mentioned that, because that same Blaylock Wellness Report, again, the same report from June, said that very same thing.
Yep,
That
it's
working out
becoming a
too
thing.
much is bad. I mean, like, if you're young, you're 30 years old, and you're doing these HIIT routines, and you're doing the
CrossFit.
thank you, the CrossFit and all that kind of thing, like the Israelites did. You know, that's okay if you're younger. But when you're older, we still have to do weight training when we're older.
Absolutely.
That is the most important thing, weight bearing exercise. And riding a bike is not weight bearing because you're sitting down. Okay.
And some people do
So I mean,
very
it's
well.
okay for cardio, but not for weight bearing exercise.
And too much cardio is an issue.
Yeah.
And some people our age, in fact, our friends, do CrossFit every day, and they're our age, and they do very well at it. They used to be runners, and they used to run like 30 hours a week. Now they find that CrossFit is actually healthier for them than running 30 hours a week.
Yep.
30 miles, not 30 hours,
Right,
30 miles.
30 miles. Now, granted, and admittedly, they are in better shape than we are. They are, you know, they did this whole
admit
thing
it.
called the Murph on on Memorial Day, which is basically an athletic challenge where you do 100 push-ups, or no, 100 pull-ups, 200
It's like, yeah,
push-ups,
a
and
lot.
300 air squats, and then a mile of
Wow.
running on either side of it, or something like this. And they did it, and they're 54. And that's Billy and Beth Weiss, our pharmacist friends. So they're buff. They know what they're doing. So, but anyway, getting back to the exercise, I mean, let's just share what we do. So I'll share what I do first, and then you can share what you do when you go to the gym for a typical day. So when I go to the gym, I stretch first. That is something very valuable I learned from my friend. He is a chiropractor. Really handy knowing all these people. Dr. Paul Calvillo, out of Forest City, North Carolina. If you live anywhere near there, go see Dr. Paul. He is amazing. He is the best of the best. He doesn't give himself enough credit. Anyway, so he told me that stretching is of utmost importance, because I had my back go out, and it lasted for a week and a half. I've never had my back go out like that before. And he said, because I'm never stretching my hamstrings. So my hamstrings affected my glutes, which affected my back. It kind of went all the way up. So now I'm religious about stretching every morning. So I'll get up 5:30, 5:20, go downstairs, stretch for 5 minutes. I'll do these stretches I do to stretch the hamstring specifically, and among other things. So, and then I'll go to the gym, and we go to Planet Fitness, nice and cheap. You know, it's probably one near you. And I do a mile or 2 miles, depends on how I'm feeling that day, on the treadmill. Mm-hmm. And I'll go at 4 miles an hour for walking. That's a pretty brisk walk. And then if I'm feeling good that day, if I can do it, I'm going to move it up to about 5.2 miles per hour. And I'm about 5'9". It all depends on how tall you are too for these type of speeds. And I run the rest, just a slight jog. Then I'll do about 3 or 4 different types of weight bearing exercise. So I'll do the push-up machine, I'll do pull downs, or do some free weights and things like that. I'll usually have about time to do about 4 of them, back to back. And then by that time, if I do have time left, I'll run about another mile on the treadmill if I can, if I'm not running out of time, because I have to get back to the desk here and work for Rude Awakening. So that takes me about 45 minutes at the gym. So I do 45 minutes. What do you do?
Well, mine takes a little longer, but it's not as intense, I guess. I walk for 45 to an hour at a pretty good clip, about 3.7.
That's a long time, though.
Yep.
But that's helping you a lot with weight loss.
It is. I used to run, but I found that walking actually works better for me. It makes me lose more fat. So I walk.
There you go.
And then I do some weight bearing exercise, and I switch it up. One day I'll do back. One day I'll do back and biceps. Next day I'll do shoulders and triceps. Next day, and I do core every day, just a little bit. So that's what I do.
Okay.
But I make sure on squats, but I make sure I do some
the
weight
squats. That's what I need to
bearing
be doing.
every day,
Yep.
and also a lot of walking every
And
day.
anything you do standing, like squats, is a weight-bearing exercise. You are
Right.
on your feet and bearing your own weight. You don't have to be holding weights in your hand. That's a weight-bearing exercise. All right, so what can you do to do this test that we just showed you? Those results are exactly what I did, and this is what it is. This is it right here. It's on the first page of our website, the Biologic Blueprint Discovery Panel. When people do our 12-week or our 6-week program, this is the test they do. You don't have to do the 12 weeks of coaching if you don't want to, but if you feel you want to after this, we can. So this is a good foot in the door to see if you want to go further with it. But this may be all you need. So it's $319. That includes an hour consult with me. And if you include the word bonus in the discount code when you go to when you check out, you'll get 2 extra tests. Jody, what are they?
They are H. pylori, which we talked about, and chlamydial antibodies.
Okay, great. So you'll get those 2 extra tests, and you'll get another hour. In addition to the hour you spend with me, you'll get an hour of coaching, which is likely with Jody.
Or you.
Or me.
Or both
or
of
both
us.
of us, or whatever. So you get an hour of coaching. So you'll get a benefit of getting 1 hour of coaching that we would, we normally do like 12 weeks of that kind of thing, but you'll get to see what it's like to do 1 hour of coaching as well. That again gives you a good idea as to whether or not you'd want to move into the coaching realm of things. And if you're not sure about any of this and you just want to find out more about the big programs, the 12-week, 6-week, go ahead and give me a call. We can do this for free for 30 minutes. So you go to lairdwellness.com/blueprint, and there you will see a calendar where you can pick a time that's good for you. And every time there that you see is available. And so you pick the time, I'll visit with you, I'll tell you all about it, and then you can decide what you want to do. If you want to do it, great. If not, that's okay. No harm, no foul. It was free. And there you go. Good way to just step in and see if this is what you want to do. So thank you for joining us tonight. This has been entertaining, I hope, for you, and very informative, more importantly. And again, if you want to know more about it, there's the information there on the bottom of your screen, and we will talk to you next time. Yeah. Until then, next week I don't know if we'll be here because we're house sitting for friends, so maybe not.
Probably not.
Okay, so we'll see you next time.
Unless
until
we
then,
do like a quick
one,
a quick Facebook Live.
But there's enough here today you might want to rewatch it, right? So now, by the way, when we do these, people always ask, hey, can you put this on YouTube? Can you put it on Rumble or someplace? Yes. At the end of every broadcast, whenever Facebook is ready for us to download it, we download it and we immediately put it on Rumble and we put it on YouTube. It's very simple to find. lairdwellness.com/YouTube or lairdwellness.com/Rumble. You'll find it in both places, and there's the whole playlist of all of these shows are on there. So there you go. Until then, see you next time.
Take care.